Hi everyone, you're watching We Had That. Today I'm going to talk about my list of the top 10 vintage Star Wars figures. In 1978, the first wave of 12 Star Wars figures were distributed by Kenner, and they instantly became the hottest toys in stores. From 1978 through 1985, Kenner released about 100 different figures and sold millions of them, making a fortune for both Kenner and George Lucas. Although they weren't the first 3 3/4 inch figures on the market, they certainly helped to make that the standard scale well into the next decade. Kids, including me, loved these toys. So here's my list of the top 10 vintage Star Wars figures. Number 10, Lando Calrissian in his skiff guard disguise from Return of the Jedi. He came with a cool, weird, intriguing weapon and a pretty cool helmet. When you took off the helmet, the figure underneath still looked cool. This figure has kind of a samurai vibe to me. It didn't make the list because of anything Lando Calrissian did in the movie Return of the Jedi. It made the list solely based on how cool the action figure looked. Number 9, R2-D2 with sensor scope from The Empire Strikes Back. The original R2-D2 figure was already cool, and adding the sensor scope just made him even better. The Star Wars universe is filled with cool droids, and R2 is definitely one of the most famous. Although he's a really important character in the movies, he played more of a supporting role for me as an action figure, so he's not higher on the list, but this version of the figure is still great. Number 8, the Emperor's Royal Guard from Return of the Jedi. These guys showed up in the movie basically as set decoration. They didn't really do much of anything, but they looked awesome and they made great action figures. It didn't really matter what they did or didn't do in the movies when it came to playing with the toys. So as a cool looking figure goes, this one became more of an important character as a toy than he was in the movie. Plus, they came with a really cool spear kind of weapon. So even though the Royal Guard didn't do much in the movie, they still make my top 10 list of action figures. Number 7, Darth Vader. Vader should have been a lot closer to the top of this list, honestly, and if we're just talking about the character, he would have been. However, we're talking about the action figures, so he's lower on the list because I didn't think as an action figure it was as cool as it could have been. I still love the figure, but he seemed kind of scrawny for Darth Vader, and once you lost the vinyl cape, his arms and legs were just too thin. Plus, he had the telescoping lightsaber gimmick that prevented him from using his right hand for anything else. It was still a good figure of a great character, but if the figure had been better, Darth Vader would have come a lot closer to topping this list. Number 6, Chewbacca. This lovable Wookiee had to be on my list. He was kind of like a cross between Han Solo's best friend and an overprotective dog. How could I not want an action figure of this guy? He was the only Rebel action figure to remain unchanged for all 3 movies, so you basically only had to buy one Chewbacca and you were set. Unfortunately, I lost my Chewbacca gun pretty early on, so my Chewbacca didn't have a gun for most of the years that I was playing with these figures. Still, with such a cool figure of such an awesome character, he had to be pretty high up on my list, and that's why Chewbacca is at number 6. Number 5, Biker Scouts from The Return of the Jedi. By the time Return of the Jedi came out, I was still into Star Wars figures, but not as obsessively as I had been in earlier years. However, the Biker Scout was definitely an exception. This was probably my favorite figure from the 3rd movie. I loved the speeder bike scene in the movie, I loved the speeder bikes themselves, and I thought the outfit for the Biker Scouts was amazingly cool. I also thought that the unique design for their guns was pretty intriguing. I still have the little catalog that came with one of my vehicles, and I had circled the Biker Scout and the speeder bike and written "lots" next to them. I guess I'd given that booklet to my parents shortly before a birthday or Christmas in hopes that they would help me to build my Biker Scout gang. Unfortunately, I only ever had one of the figures and one of the speeder bikes, but I distinctly remember as a kid wanting to army build yet another Imperial troop. It may be a surprise to some people that this character is as high as number 5 on my list, but I really did think that he was a great figure and an awesome design. Number 4, Han Solo in Bespin outfit from Empire Strikes Back. Han Solo was the cool guy in Star Wars, and everybody knew it. He may not have been your favorite, but you still knew he was the cool guy. He was one of the main characters that you needed to have in action figure form, and Kenner knew it. Between 1978 and 1984, they released several different versions of Han Solo. My favorite one is the one in the Bespin outfit. I liked it better than the original version because the original had that weird bent arm that made it hard to use him in certain situations. I loved the Hoth version of the figure too, but it didn't really have the edginess that Han Solo had to me. An argument could be made for the trenchcoat version from Return of the Jedi. That was also a really cool figure, but I didn't like the head sculpt as well as the Bespin Han. Number 3, the Stormtroopers from Star Wars. I remember even as a kid, I thought these guys looked awesome. I wanted an army of them. I had 4, but that was close enough. I thought they looked cool in the movie, and I thought they looked cool as action figures too. To this day, I still love the standard issue Stormtroopers. As cool as the Biker Scouts, Hoth Stormtroopers, and AT-AT drivers were, none of them were as iconic as your basic Stormtrooper. Also, if you were a kid and could only have one, the basic Stormtrooper could take the place of any of the others if needed. They didn't need a backstory, they didn't need to develop as characters. I just thought having an army of these guys to go up against the rebels was the best adventure ever, and I would have loved to have had even more. Coming in at number 2 on my list, Luke Skywalker in his Bespin fatigues from The Empire Strikes Back. I'm pretty sure this has been my favorite version of Luke since it first came out. I didn't really think much about it as a kid, but the reason I liked this version so much was probably because it was the most versatile version of the character for me. The original Luke figure had the telescoping lightsaber, which was cool for the first week until it got lost and was replaced with a toothpick, but it prevented the figure from using his right hand for anything else. The Bespin Luke can hold his lightsaber or whatever else he needs to hold. Also, this figure's relatively generic look makes him a decent stand-in for the first movie Luke or the Dagobah Luke, in addition to being the Bespin Luke. So if you're only going to have one Luke, and you've got to have at least one Luke, for me, this would be the best choice. In terms of standing up to the rigors of play, the majority of this figure's unpainted because a large percentage of his outfit was the color of the plastic. Even when the paint becomes worn away from playing with the figure so much, he still looks good. And lastly, this version of Luke came with both a gun and a lightsaber, so he was well armed, and that was important as a kid. Unlike the telescoping lightsaber on the first figure, any of the other figures can use this lightsaber. Luke was one of the main characters of Star Wars, and for me, this was the best version and most versatile version of a Luke Skywalker figure from the original line. How can you top that? And coming in at number 1, it's probably no surprise, Boba Fett. Growing up, all the kids I knew thought he was the coolest bad guy in the Star Wars universe. I know his first appearance was in the holiday special, and yeah, that thing was terrible. However, the cartoon part of the holiday special, the part that included Boba Fett, was actually pretty cool. Regardless, my first memories of Boba Fett were from the Kenner mail-away offer and the figure itself, not from the holiday special or the movie. Even knowing nothing about this guy, he just looked awesome. You didn't have to see the movie to come to a few conclusions about Boba Fett. For example, we know that just from inspecting the figure, he has a wrist rocket on his left arm and a missile launcher on his back. His clothes aren't as tailored as the other Imperial forces, and his armor is mismatched colors. All of this gives him sort of a disheveled rogue look. The figure seems to have a "I don't care what you think" kind of attitude. Even before seeing Empire Strikes Back, I thought this guy was awesome. After seeing the movie and watching Darth Vader make a special note to tell Boba Fett not to disintegrate Han Solo, I mean, you have to tell this guy not to disintegrate someone, or that's exactly what he'll do. I thought he was even cooler. Even though he was kind of a bumbling idiot in Return of the Jedi, he did get to use that jetpack, so that was awesome too. Boba Fett, still number 1 all these years later. There you have it, my top 10 list of vintage Star Wars figures. How does my top 10 list compare with yours? Did I leave any figures out that you would have included? Are there figures on my list that should have been left out? Tell me in the comments below. Please like this video, share it, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Also, if you collect toys, you should know about Toylanta, the best toy show in the southeastern United States, held annually just north of Atlanta, Georgia. Visit toylanta.com for more information. Thanks for watching.